morning to you. Thank you so much for staying on the AM show. I am Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah, and we kickstart our conversation on our big stories. We are starting with that one on senior high schools facing a looming crisis of food shortage. And the senior high schools, or the heads of the schools, have attributed the food shortage, with the chairman of CHASS in the Upper East region warning of a shutdown of schools by July 15 if the trend continues. Now, they attribute this to lack of supply. Now, what does this mean for the survival of the students in these schools who are enjoying free SHS? We'll be going to the regions where our correspondents will tell us the situation on the ground. We'll also be speaking to chairman of CHASS in the Upper West region, Magnus Innocent Der. Hopefully we'll get a reaction from the chairman of NAGRAT, Jacob Anaba Kofi Asare, and also speak to the executive director of the Education Watch. Just this morning, we've received a notification from the PRO of the Ghana Education Service saying that the Ministry of Education has had a meeting with CHASS, and the schools are going to start receiving supplies on the 12th of July, which is tomorrow. But while they wait for that, we'll have a conversation on what has led us to this point and how we can avert this recurring in the future. Let me bring you details of that story as it's captured on myjoyonline.com. So we'll scroll up quickly and bring you details there. So food shortage has hit senior high schools across the country, with the Upper West Region chapter of the Conference of Heads of Assisted Secondary Schools, CHASS, warning that students and parents may soon be compelled to take up the cost of feeding if government fails to provide supplies in 6 days. In a letter to the regional director of the Ghana Education Service, CHASS noted that the food suppliers contacted by the buffer stock company, as well as local suppliers contacted to help out, are all refusing to do so, citing non-payment of outstanding monies owed them by government. Okay, so this, they say, has exacerbated an already dire situation in schools in the region, with some schools not having enough supplies to last a week. In fact, and there's a quote, an assessment of the situation indicated that most schools cannot go beyond 1 week if nothing urgent is done about it. And we're also told that food in short supply include maize, rice, sugar, palm oil, and other oils, soya beans, sardine, and mackerels, and Tom Brown. So what is the Ministry of Education saying this morning? Let me just bring you details of that captured in a post by the PRO of the ministry. So while I wait to bring you that post, let me just head to the Upper West region now. My colleague Rafiq Salam is there for us. Hello, Rafiq.
Hello, Bernice.
Good to have you here. How's the Upper West region?
The region is very calm, still in the mood of the celebration of Eid al-Adha, which is expected to end around 4 p.m. today.
Right. So we've heard from the schools. They are concerned there's no food. Have you had the opportunity to visit some of the higher schools? How are they coping currently?
The situation, as the writer put it in the write-up, is dire. The schools are saying that they are at their worst ends. The fortunate or opportunity that came to them was this celebration of the Eid al-Adha, where the schools are not operating at full strength. You know, majority of the students who are Muslims have been given some kind of a few days to come for the celebration. And so if without the Salah, they wouldn't have been able to even go beyond the 1 week that they have stated in that write-up. And so the headmasters and then also school authorities are saying that they are at their work ends. They have done their best to at least contain the situation, but this one, they were not able to do it because they think that they are not. They think that they can't do. They can't do without these food items that they have listed, and so they have to have this meeting, and then also to at least cry to the government to come to their aid.
So are you aware of what the school children are doing? How are they surviving?
For now, as I rightly put it, that majority of the students are on holidays for the Eid al-Adha, and then also those who are there, they are being fed, but not as it have been, because most of the commodities, most of the items that they will have used are not there. You know, they don't have corn brown, they don't have soybean, and also some of the ingredients that they will use to cook this food. And so what they now do is that they can continue to provide them rice for close about 3 days or 4 days. So this time around, it's about what is available at the school, and that's what they cook for the students. If not, they are not going. They are not going with the menu that is stipulated to them by the GES.
Rafiq, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for joining us, and Barakat de Salah to you.
Thank you very much. Happy to you also.
All right. So we've also been joined via Zoom. Jacob Anaba Kofi Asare has joined us. We also have the Executive Director of Africa Education Watch and Kwesi Kwarteng, PR of the Ghana Education Service. But before I bring them in, let me bring you the latest to this particular development, where we received an indication from the Ministry of Education. Let me just bring that one to you now. And the Minister of Education has just concluded a meeting with the leadership of CHASS on the issue of challenges in the supply of food to some senior high schools. The issue has been resolved, and all affected schools are expected to receive full supplies latest by Tuesday, 12 July 2022, and is signed by Kwesi Kwarteng, PR of the Ministry of Education. I beg your pardon, earlier I said Ghana Education Service. He is the PRO of the Ministry of Education. If I have Mr. Kwarteng on the line, all right. So we will raise Kwesi Kwarteng on the line shortly, but let's speak to Mr. Jacob Anaba, who is with NAGRAT. Hello, sir. Good morning. Thanks for your time. So I'm sure, like many of your colleagues, you are not surprised about this situation. Government has intervened. First off, were you part of the meeting, and are you able to tell us if this intervention is long-lasting or is temporal?
Hello, good morning.
Hello, Mr. Anaba. Good morning. Thank you for joining the program.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Happy Eid. Yeah.
Same to you. So, were you part of this meeting between the Ministry of Education and the heads of assisted senior high schools, or are you aware of what transpired during that meeting?
No. I just got it from you. We're not part of this meeting. But I don't think that is a solution to the issue that has been raised. This has become perennial. It's always there. So solving it by this post, I don't think that's the way to go.
All right. Since you're not privy to what happened in that meeting, let me speak to the PRO of the Ministry of Education who posted this and get more details, and we can take your reaction to that. Good morning, Mr. Kwarteng. Thank you for joining the program. So this particular measure, or this assurance you're giving the schools that they will be supplied food by Tuesday, which is tomorrow, is this a long-lasting solution, or it's a quick fix to the problem?
I think what is the most important thing is that there are some challenges, and at every point in time, those challenges must be addressed. Solutions to challenges may be interim. A lot of them too may be a long-term solution. But even within the long-term solution, you may have some lapses that you still have to resolve. The challenge that we have within the food supplies arrangement, which is being coordinated by the buffer stocks, has to do largely with delays of payment, which usually results in delays in the supplies of food. As a long-term measure, the Minister for Education has engaged some banks, ADB for instance, is one, to find an alternative source of payment or funding with the full food supplier arrangement, where suppliers have to supply food, then the banks will quickly go in, pay the claims that this supplier made, and at the end of the day, government reimburses the bank. So in the long term, that is what we believe will be able to sustain the current arrangements that we are having. But of course, as a very short-term measure, there has been reports of food shortages and potential food shortages in most of the schools. I mean, if you read the press that was issued by CHASS, Upper West chapter, clearly they cited a potential food shortage. And based on that, the Minister for Education has to act and intervene. And as I speak with you, arrangements have been far advanced for suppliers to supply foods to avert a potential food shortage within the region and some schools that may have similar challenges. So yes, we do admit there could be challenges. Sometimes it may not necessarily be even delays in payment. A lot of time you may have some logistical constraints like storage facilities being out the food. But like yes, we do admit that it has more to do with the delays of the payment and the suppliers not having the power or the capacity to be able to supply against the future. But this is being worked on. But as of now, those schools that gave a caution of potential shortages, we are addressing them latest by Tuesday. We should see schools in those schools. I mean, I've always insisted that our mandate is to embrace challenges and solve it. We are not there because there will not be any challenges. And we don't run a 100% smooth
All right,
system.
Mr. Kwating, so this issue you say has been resolved, as you put it in your own words. Do you mean that those who have not been paid have received payments? Or once again, you have gone into a certain negotiation or agreements with for them to supply pending payments?
So I recall, I think it was just last Wednesday, where the Minister for Education met with food suppliers in Ghana. And then we admitted that, yes, when it comes to payment, there has been some delays. But the parties agreed that due to the urgency of the moment, they will continue to supply ahead of an arrangement that the minister had made to make sure that as soon as possible, their payments are being made so that they'll have the capacity and the market to be able to continue.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So these senior high schools that are, all of them definitely, the private, public ones running the free senior high school program, parents do not pay for anything including feeding, right?
As far as I'm concerned, I mean,
Okay.
that is arrangement that parents do not pay for feeding.
Okay, so this is supposed to be fully catered for by government under the free senior
Exactly.
high school program. Hello, Mr. Kwating.
I can hear you.
Okay,
yes,
so this is supposed to be catered for by government under the free senior high school program. Why has there been a delay in the payment of food supplied by these suppliers?
Of course, I admitted that there's
Yes, but you didn't tell us why. What's causing that lapse in the system?
The challenge we have is that there's been delays in payments. I don't.
Is it that there's no money? Is it that there's no money to?
I don't work with the Ministry of Finance. I'm unable to speak to that effect. What the challenge now is that it is a public knowledge that there's been delay when it comes to the payment of suppliers. But the most important thing is that even though there is delay, it has not affected the supplies of food to the schools, except to say that schools have given caution on the potential shortage. So within the interim, I can say a lot of schools have food. Of course, I mean, there are some food items that generally schools may not have. So if you look at Bapa Store, for instance, there are 17 food items. It is possible that a school may be lacking 1 or 2 food items out of the 17. And so such a school may give a caution. It is also possible that the quantity of supply that a school has within the following days or the following week, it is possible that it's going to finish if there is no supply. And so it is very natural for such a school to give the caution. It does not necessarily mean that there is that imminent shortage within the school. And so yes, there's been such delays. I am unable to speak to why those payments have not been made, because I don't speak for the Ministry of Finance. I speak for the Ministry of Education.
And the Ministry of Education hasn't, is it a case that the Ministry of Education hasn't found out why? You
work with the media. I throw the challenge to you. You can find out from.
No, but fair enough. That's okay. I can't speak to the Finance Ministry, but I have you here now, and I'm asking you, is it the case that you haven't, in trying to resolve this issue, found out from the Ministry of Finance what is causing the delay in payments? Is that a case?
I think what is most important is that we admit there is a challenge. And what is most important is that we are ready to resolve the challenge. How are we ready to resolve the challenge? The challenge has been with the delay of payment. So there has to be an alternative arrangement, where I've made to you an alternative arrangement is that we get some banks to pay later on, government pay the bank. So the problem has to do with a delay. I don't know how you probably want us to put it. A delay with the release of money. And then how do we resolve such a challenge? You get the banks to quickly pay them. Later on, you reimburse the bank.
Right. Mr. Kwati, I'll be wrapping up with you shortly and get a reaction from my other guests. But are you also aware that besides the potential food shortage as a result of the lack of supply of food ingredients to the schools, there's also been a long-standing problem of reduction in rations. So, for example, there are some students who could get at least 2 ladles of rice in the dining hall. It was reduced to 1.5, and some of them now take 1. Are you aware that some schools are?
Are you basing this on a fact or based on speculation? Are you able to?
I'm not speculating. Just a minute. Just a minute. Are you also aware that some schools are now offering to sell bread, for example, to the students instead of giving it to them for free?
They are able to. Come again.
Are you aware that some schools are selling bread, for example, to students instead of giving it to them for free? Some are also.
Are you able to list the schools who quickly going to resolve the problem? I
will give you the schools, but I'm just asking if that has come to your attention.
You see, that is the problem always with the media. A lot of times you speculate.
Let me give you the schools. Hold on, Mr. Kwating. I'm not Mr. Kwating. Mr. Kwating, just a minute. I'm not speculating. Go to Accra Girls. We've not have
and
find out. So I won't come and sit here. Please permit me, sir.
We'll look into it. The fact that you mentioned the name of the school does not mean that such exists.
No,
it was the same media. It was the same media who said Okwapema does not have food. When there was food. It was the same media who said Protect does not have food. The minister went there and announced there was food. I am not running away from the challenge that yes, there are delays with payments. There are situations where some food items are not there.
Mr. Kwating, this was a simple question of whether it has come to your attention or not. I just wanted a yes or no answer. Are you aware?
I think I also gave a simple question on helping me with the school.
And I just did that. So are you aware, yes or no?
We've not had any official complaint to that effect. But quickly that you brought to our attention, we are going to visit the school, look into it, and resolve such a challenge if it exists.
I appreciate your time here this morning. Kwesi Kwating is PRO of the Ministry of Education, and we've just been talking about the intervention by the ministry to resolve food supply issues to senior high schools across the country. Well, let's progress with the conversation. Magnus Innocent is chairman of CHASS, and he joins us. I'll be going back to my earlier guest, who is with NAGRAT, Vice President of NAGRAT, Jacob Anaba. I'll be going back to him shortly. But let me find out from the chairman of CHASS, at least he can give us more on what happened in that meeting between government in CHASS, or the Ministry of Education in CHASS. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining the program.
Good morning,
Great.
Viewers and listeners.
So we've just been told by the PRO of the Ministry of Education that there has been some sort of arrangement. The food suppliers have been spoken to at least supply food pending an arrangement or a certain repayment of the monies owed them. Are you satisfied with this arrangement, and are you confident that it will yield the results that you want?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to make a correction before I go on. Upper West CHASS, we said that if by the 15th we don't get enough food rations, we might be compelled to ask the students to feed themselves. We didn't talk of shutting down the schools. We don't have that power to shut down schools.
All right.
So that is a correction.
Thank you, sir.
To say. But then coming to the meeting, yesterday we had a meeting with the minister and with buffer stock. And yes, during the meeting, the minister outlined a number of measures that were taken to ensure that food gets to the schools by Tuesday or starting Tuesday. So yes, he has assured us that we will get the rations that we need. And we are hoping that by the Friday, we'll have enough rations so that we will not be compelled to go the line that we will be compelled to if the rations don't get to the schools.
So these rations, will they translate into increased portions and quality when children go to the dining hall? Hopefully. We hope that if we get the full rations, he says they will be able to supply rations at least for 2 months whilst they work on supplying the rest of the rations. So if we get the full rations for the 2 months, definitely it will translate into increase in rations and quality. So this problem, this is not the first time you're having issues with food or potential food shortage. What has the ministry been telling you about what is resulting in the lapse? Why exactly are food suppliers not being paid on time? Have you been told?
Not exactly. At least with the meetings that we have had with the ministry and with our management, they have told us, they have admitted the challenges that are confronting the schools. They have told us of what they are doing. But as to whether what has led to delays in payment, we cannot tell.
Like I mentioned, this is not the first time you're having issues with food shortage, but are you able to paint the picture for us? Prior to the Free Senior High School program, and since the inception of the Free Senior High School program, what has if there has been any difference, what has it been?
I will say that it has to do with the supplies. That's all. Prior to senior high, free senior high, each school has its local suppliers where they could negotiate. But now with free senior high, you see that the supplies are coming from buffer stock. So it is difficult for the schools to engage the suppliers directly. And sometimes when the situation becomes critical and buffer stock gives you the permission to engage local suppliers, sometimes you meet some resistance because, like we talked of the payment issue. That is basically the difference.
Which system works better for the senior high schools? Where you have to engage locally or when you have to rely on the buffer stock?
I I think this question will be better answered after maybe we have a look at both systems critically and see which one works. But offhand, I don't think I'll be able to give an answer.
So there are parents who are concerned about the quality of food served in the dining halls in our schools across the country. And we've picked up reports of some schools where students say we used to have 2 ladles of rice, now we have only 1.5, or we are being told to bring our own fish to eat our kinky, or we are being sold bread in the dining hall to complement our breakfast. Is the assurance that once the supplies come in, all these will stop, or there will still be issues with some of the complementary elements to feeding?
I think one of the contributors alluded to the fact that one of the problems we are having is underweight, because if they're supposed to bring you 100 kg of maize and they bring you 80 kg, you know what it means. So one of the basic things that we have is the issue of underweight. Then we also have the issue of short supply, in the sense that sometimes a supplier is asked to bring, for instance, 100 bags of maize, and he says that because of the price challenges, he'll rather negotiate, and maybe he will want to bring you 80, 70. Sometimes some go as far as 60 and they take 40.
So in a sense, inflation is affecting, is that it? Is the cost of products as seen across the markets in the country is affecting the amount of food that you receive? Is that it?
Definitely, it's a general problem, I guess.
When I was in high school, there were some schools that were allowing parents to do what they call support feeding. So you had some schools say, well, we want the students to eat well so they can learn well. So kindly support us with the little that you can so that we complement what government is giving us and give your children good feeding. I'm sure you are aware that there were some schools that were doing that. Would CHASS want to revisit that module, especially in these times where food keeps soaring, the price of food keeps soaring?
Definitely, the role of the parents as stakeholders in education cannot be undermined. And so if the parents can support in any way, not just only with food, but in any way they can support the schools, I think it will be a welcome idea. The long and short of it all is that they support the schools so that quality learning and teaching and learning can take place.
Right. So finally, I would like to just find out from you if this new arrangement that has been made cuts across the country, cuts across senior high schools in the country, or it's primarily focused on schools in the Upper West because they released the statement.
Another point of correction, we didn't release a statement. We wrote a letter to our regional director. How it got into the public space, we don't know. But we wrote directly to our regional director. We didn't release a statement. But anyway, coming to the meeting, yes, yesterday.
Hello, Mr. Dare. Well, too bad. It appears we've lost Mr. Dare's feed there, but that's Innocent Dare, who is he was a chairman of CHASS, and he was just giving us some details on whether this resolution covers all senior high schools or just schools in the Upper West region. I'm told he's back on the line. So quickly, you were answering that question for us, sir.
Yes, I was saying that it can.
Well, while I wait for him to come back, let me just go to Mr. Napa, who is Vice President of NAGRAT. Thank you for holding on, sir. So we've heard from the PRO of the Ministry of Education, and we've also heard from the chairman of CHASS. You are with NAGRAT. Already you're on strike, and this particular issue is also coming in, and the students are the ones who are bearing the brunt of all these.
Okay.
Are you satisfied with the resolution put in by the Ministry of Education on this matter?
Thank you once again. To be frank with you, this new JEC sort of solution or stopgap measure is not and will not work. NAGRA had earlier called for a review of the whole SHS policy, and that will also look at the buffer stock issue. The headmaster alluded to the fact that there are underweight of supply, and that is one of the issues that is causing this problem that we witness almost every year. The PRO of the Ministry of Education has stated clearly that the major issue is with finance. Yes, finance plays a major issue, but when the food supply to the schools is not up to the quantity, we have issues like this that will come up. Now, one of the main aims of this buffer stock was to relieve the headmasters to concentrate on academic work. Today, what do we see? The headmasters are now going to the market, trying to get something to keep the students in the school. So it means that this policy has failed. And therefore, we need to review it. We are not happy and we are not satisfied at all. Because when the students go hungry in the schools, they are unable to concentrate in the classroom.
Do you have a situation, Mr. Naba, do you have a situation where sometimes teachers have to intervene and support some students with feeding? Does that happen?
Yeah, it does. It does. It happens in most of the schools. You had a report from Accra where the students have complained of the food that they are giving. They have reduced the ration or they have even changed it. And that is affecting the academic calendar because students will have to stay long before they are called into the dining hall to be fed. So they will go back to the classroom and they've lost a lot of time just looking for food to eat. So this is a situation that we need to confront head on. For the financial aspect, government must come clear. But the supply chain where schools are giving underweight supply must be looked at. Either somebody is profiting from this supply or the supervision is not done well. You ask the head to compare previous, before the free SHS and now. When headmasters were giving the bulk money to purchase, we never heard of issues like this, apart from the northern schools who were on scholarship. But in the southern schools, we never experienced shortage of food because the headmaster dealt directly with the suppliers, and they were able to have that confidence in the headmasters that they will pay when they get the money. So what is happening to buffer stock? We need to investigate what is happening there. If not, we will never get this result.
So you said you weren't satisfied with this. You call it a knee-jerk approach to solving the problem. So what for you, at least, will bring that long-term resolution that you want?
All stakeholders must sit at the table so that the concerns will be brought forth and we'll all look at it and see where we will have to straighten up if there are crooked ways. I mean, like I said, the suppliers, why do you supply food items below the quantity that you've been asked to supply, and you go and compel the headmaster to sign, the headmaster has cannot reject because he needs to keep the students in school, and they are forced to sign underweight supplies, and that cannot take them to the end of the semester. We need to sit down, and everybody must come to the table and be frank and speak to the issue, and we'll look for a solution to it permanently.
Mr. Naba, I'll come back to you to take your reactions to the president's appeal for you to go back to the classrooms. But now we've been joined by Dr. Clement.
I hope you are not also appealing to me.
I'll come back to you shortly. We also have Dr. Clement Apak, ranking member of the Education Committee of Parliament. He joins us via phone. Thank you for your time, Doc. So last week I spoke to you. We were talking about the cost of living allowance that teachers were requesting for. This time round, it is about food shortage in our senior high schools. We've heard from CHASS, we've heard from the Vice President of NAGRAT, who is asking that the free senior high school policy be reviewed because it appears that this is, in a way, linked to the program and how it is being managed. Your quick thoughts?
Well, first of all, let me say good morning to you and co-discussants. And I must say that the Vice President of NAGRAT, Mr. Naba, actually is my mate. We were mates at the University of Ghana. Proud vandals, as we call ourselves. And so I'm not surprised that he is being very truthful and factual. After all, our motto is that truth stands. Look, he's called for a review of the free senior high school policy. It's long overdue. And time without number, my good self and many other stakeholders have all called for a review of the program. We have always said that the program is a good program. It is born out of our constitution. But the implementation leaves a lot more to be desired. And as we speak, I am surprised that for a program that we have invested, according to the finance minister, in 5 years, some 7.6 billion Ghana cedis into, and for 2022 alone, we have approved some 2.3 billion. We will still have situations where buffer stock food suppliers are refusing to supply food to the secondary schools because of a lack of funds. I mean, are we really prioritizing education, and for that matter, a program that Akufo-Addo and his government have said is a flagship program? Because if that were the case, I don't believe that we should still owe buffer stock to the extent that buffer stock suppliers have refused to supply food to schools. And look, the reports we are getting is that this situation is not confined to secondary schools only in the Upper West region. It is across board. And I think the sooner government agrees to this clarion call for a review so that we can resituate the program and look at what has worked and what has not worked to adjust it, the better for us. Look, if you were to look at the PIAC, the Public Interest and Accountability Committee's monitoring report, 2018-2019, of the free senior high school policy, all of these issues that we are discussing have been captured. One, this decision to centralize the food supply chain, where contracts are given from Accra to persons who sometimes don't even know the location of the schools to supply them schools, has created a conduit for high-level corruption. So it is not just the lack of availability of funds for buffer stock suppliers, but even when the funds are there, they either undersupply the food items, as has been indicated, they supply unwholesome or expired food items, or sometimes they increase the weight of grains by deliberately adding impurities. We have seen the pictures, we have seen the videos. So the current system is just not fit for purpose of the bat. So it is not just about lack of funding, but it's the undersupply where the headmasters have no say, and it is also the addition of impurities to increase the weight where the headmasters have no say. So the best option going forward would be to review the program. As a member of the Public Accounts Committee, we have sat on reports of pre-tertiary institutions, secondary schools, and it is bad. We are even looking at a situation where we want to activate processes to get just the buffer stock food supply system as it pertains to the secondary schools audited, because something is just not adding up in the whole narrative around the food supply system within the context of the way it is being run. So we wait to see how soon government is going to make resources available, because I don't see a reason why there can't be resources when we have approved some 2.3 billion for the program in 2022.
Dr. Park, we've been told that there's been a meeting between CHASS and the Ministry of Education, and supply will begin tomorrow, 12th July 2022, to the schools. So
well, you see, that is nice and dandy, but for how long can this keep replicating itself? It has almost become an annual ritual. And in fact, sometimes it happens 2 or 3 times. You have to remember that earlier this year, the issue of food shortages came up. And in fact, it was very clear that CHASS was going to let the students go. The government was able to find some money, 200 million, to pay buffer stock suppliers, when in fact, the figures are shown that government owed buffer stock suppliers 500 million. So those areas are there. And that is the question I continue asking. How come we have invested so much, we continue to invest these colossal amounts of money every year in the program, and yet we continue to have these problems? It simply does not add up. And you see, my colleagues on the other line and honest parents and persons in the educational sector will tell you that the challenges bedeviling the program are beyond even just the food supply. Are you aware that the program, by its design, is supposed to grant every student 1 core textbook per core subject? But that is not happening. And I can many several examples where what the program is supposed to do and the parameters within which it is supposed to cover, that is not happening. And yet when you speak, you know, you are labeled as somebody who is against the program. And we say, look, we want the program to succeed. It is a national program. We are investing national resources in it. So when there are challenges, admit those challenges. Let us all sit around the table and try to see how we can rectify these challenges so that we can get value for money, so that our wards, the future of this nation, can have the serenity of mind, the peacefulness of mind to study. When we are dealing with teenagers whose emotional well-being and their growth is impacted by the type of diet that they consume. So when you have a situation like this, where there are food shortages, where sometimes they eat one staple all week, and even the rations are so low, they are being supplied with expired food items. I mean, clearly, we are doing great harm to the future of this nation, and that is not right.
Thank you for joining the conversation. Dr. Clement Apak is ranking member on Parliament Education Committee. Let's head to the Central Region now and get a sense of what is happening in some schools there. My colleague Richard Kojanyako has visited some of them. Hello, Richard. What were you able to gather?
So I'm currently at the Sadal College. I've been to about 4 senior high schools apart from the Sadal College. And what I can report is that in all these schools, special arrangements have been made, so the students are being fed. But there are some problems that these heads and school authorities are facing. The students are being underfed, not because they would want to underfeed them, but because the situation calls for that. So when the supplies are being done, they need like 15 bags of sugar, for instance, but they have to sign for 15 bags, and they are given 10 bags of sugar to make up for the costs of the prevailing situation. And so the students, instead of being fed normally they are being underfed. The quality.
Hello, Richard. It appears that Richard's feed is frozen there. We will try to rectify that problem. But let's bring in Executive Director of the Africa Education Watch, Kofi Asare, and take his perspective on all of this. So once again, free senior high school policy is on the chopping board, even though this is food shortage, this is directly related to the program. Ms. Asare, did we bite more than we can chew with this particular program?
Good morning. Morning to your charity audience and co-panelists. Anyway, I don't even know what to say. I'm tired of complaining about or discussing issues relating to food. Feeding students shouldn't be an issue that should preoccupy, policymakers, stakeholders who should be doing more strategic, thinking and analysis. Unfortunately, we found ourselves in this corner. We boxed ourselves in this corner, and sometimes it is to be honest with you, it's very, very frustrating, and to say the least vexatious. If we are going to continue this way, because it's not news. It's just like a President Grant delaying every year for the past 16 years. It's not news. So we've managed to create another culture of, delayance within the education valuation. And I'm very, very worried that, we are creating problems instead of finding solutions to existing ones. Now, all the discussions point to the fact that there is a problem. Unfortunately, I'm not sure government sees that as a problem. And the fact that government doesn't see this arena as a challenge, it means that we are not going to solve this problem. That is the reality.
What makes you think government doesn't see the problem? We know that the Minister of Education has met with CHASS and they have offered some solutions to the problem. That alone is an admission of a problem. We are also told by the PRO that he met food suppliers. Is that not indicative enough that at least the minister is aware that there's a problem?
No. The minister is managing the symptoms of a problem. He's very, very concerned. The ministry is very, very concerned, and they are doing everything possible they can to manage the symptoms of a problem.
So what is the problem? In your estimation, what is the real problem?
The problem is that we have a poor disbursement of funding for feeding under the free senior high school. It's a problem of low liquidity. You issue invoices to contractors to supply food to various schools across the country. And as we speak, you are owing contractors to the tune of 320 million Ghana cedis. Some are being owed as far back as September last year. If you are a contractor, a supplier, you are supposed to supply rice to a particular school in Boko, how are you going to continue supplying if you have been owed in excess of 7 months? How is it possible? So you see, the Ministry of Education and buffer stock have designed a very beautiful system for distributing food. Even though I'm not in support of the centralization of the procurement of food, but they have designed a beautiful system that should work if funded. Unfortunately, that system needs an average of about 100 million Ghana cedis every month to ensure that suppliers who have been contracted under the system and invoice supply food are able to do so. Unfortunately, the Ministry of Finance is just not disbursing in accordance with the cash flow projections that the Ministry of Education has submitted to it. If you remember in May, the Honorable Minister indicated on the back of the 200 million disbursements, out of which about half went to feeding, or other, all the 200 wasn't for feeding. Some went into textbooks and other stuff, but about 100 went into feeding. On the back of that particular release, the minister indicated that the Minister of Education have actually found a solution to the problem. And that the problem was that there was no realistic projections, okay, for the Ministry of Finance to continue. So I was very happy when I heard that, even though I was surprised that there wouldn't be financial projections. I mean, I was surprised that for 4 years, Free Senior High School Secretariat and Administration of Education did not have a realistic financial projection. But I wanted to believe that was perhaps a challenge that the minister obviously identified and had fixed. Unfortunately, less than 2 months along the line, we are back to the same place. So it means that the challenge is not about developing realistic financial projections for the Ministry of Finance. The challenge is not re-engineering the system and using an ambulance service approach, as we call in policy making, to get a supplier as part of an emergency package, supply rations to schools that are not having sugar and rice. That is not the solution. The solution is having a system that ensures that the Ministry of Finance will disburse an average of 100 million every month to oil the food distribution engine, and most importantly, clear the about 320 million backlog. If you do this, suppliers will have the resources to buy and supply. That is the problem. Until that problem has been addressed, I'm sorry, we are all trying our best to manage the symptom of a problem. That is why I'm saying that we are not addressing them. If we address the problem, we won't be discussing a recurrence less than 2 months after the previous one. And this is not just Upper East, Upper West, sorry. I've spoken to a lot of schools this morning, even in the Ashanti region. Bread is out. Many schools have not had bread for a long time. So bread is out. We know bread is no more news. So the lack of bread is no more news. Sugar, same. So yeah, but my information is that there's been an arrangement overnight, and then I'm told that about 60,000 bags of sugar has been shipped. I mean, it's being shipped today to the schools in distress, and then some quantity of rice as well under an emergency package, and then it's going to arrive in the schools from tomorrow. And so there is hope, in the short term. But as I keep saying, the cause of the problem is that Parliament has approved government's budget to spend over 2 billion on Free Senior High School. About 70% of the Free Senior High School's budget is feeding. About 70%. Sorry. Or so to fund the Free Senior High Schools. If the Ministry of Finance does not disburse that money, it is not the doing of the Ministry of Education. It is not the doing. Yes. And that's why I keep advising the media that when there are shortages under Free Senior High School, don't go to the Ministry of Education or GES. Don't go to Bufferstock, because the system has been put in place. What is needed is how to oil the engine. Right. Go to the Ministry of Finance and find out why they are not disbursing according to the schedule required to let the system work. That is what we all should. Right. If we put pressure on, they will do the right thing.
Right, Mr. Asari, so like you mentioned, a chunk of our allocation for Free Senior High School is going into feeding. There are some parents who suggested we can help. Okay, since discussions on the Free Senior High School program started, there were those who were even suggesting that those who can afford should pay, and then those who are really in need should be given the Free Senior High School access. Now, some parents are saying, look, allow us. We are all aware of what the situation is with food prices, even on the markets. When we go to the market every day, the prices keep increasing. So clearly, even on that angle, there will be a problem in terms of the amount that has been allocated and how much it can procure for the students due to inflation. So is that something the government should, the ministry should be exploring, where parents say, allow us to help in feeding the children?
Finally. Of course. I mean, we have recommended this particular proposal to the government over a 4-year period, that we need to look at cost sharing the feeding component of the Free Senior High School. It should be possible to means test the student and ask children of middle to higher income earning Ghanaians, to pay. We have data on the income level of every Ghanaian in Ghana today. We are doing a lot of work to formalize even in the informal sector. And we have an idea, if you want to do means testing like other countries do, in other countries, if you want to attend a private senior high school, or if you are coming from a private basic school, it is used as a means testing mechanism. For instance, if you attended a private junior high school, the government will say pay half of your feeding program because at least you have some money to pay fees. If you attended a public junior high school, you can have 100% free feeding. There are various means that we can undertake means testing if we are politically committed to. But the government of Ghana is not committed to undertaking any means testing on the free senior high school program because of the political nature of it. The free senior high school program is managed as a political program. So government prefers to continue to carry this cross the way it has been carrying all this while. And so I don't see that happening, to be honest with you, because the approach in managing the program is actually a political policy. But we have recommended, and government has indicated that it is not interested in that recommendation, and that whether it can afford it or not, it will continue to foot the bills of rich students and poor students. Having said that, we will continue to appeal to government that it will be in the interest of government to consider means testing at least the feeding component of the free senior high school program, so that children of middle and higher income earning Ghanaians, anyone earning more than 3,000 Ghana cedis, should be able to pay the if not full, half of the feeding cost. And how much are we talking about? We are talking of something averaging about 900 cedis or 800 cedis a year, not even a semester, a year. We are talking about average of about 800 cedis a year, not a semester. So even if you have to pay half, it's only 400 cedis. I don't think it's an amount that will lead to a child being disqualified or being denied access to secondary education, especially if the parent is earning 2,000 or 3,000 cedis above. But again, it is for the political authority to determine whether they are ready, but I don't think they are ready to do that. And so I am recommending that parents should, being cognizant of the situation we find ourselves in the implementation of this political flagship, make sure that their children have adequate food so that when there are issues at the dining hall, their children will have a buffer to rely on, buy more sardine, buy more Milo, buy more Gary, buy more shito. So that don't expect that your children will get the 100% feeding required from dining hall. It is not reasonable. So that you support the government in that way. If government is not ready to invite parents to pay something, then
that would defeat the purpose of free senior high school. Then it means that the poor would not be able to afford a healthy meal a day if it has to be that the rich are giving their children directly, won't it?
That is what happens. That is what happens if you don't means test. Every social policy like this is means tested. For example, LEAP is means tested. Every month, cash grants are sent to about 100,000 beneficiaries that are very poor, the poorest of the poor in Ghana. And I am not receiving one because I'm not among them, and you are also not receiving one. That is how social interventions, pro-poor social interventions are tailored. When you means test and you target, you ensure that those in real need will get enough. So that they don't fall into the bracket of struggling. But now, where we are now, because we are not being testing the free senior high school program, yes, children of parents who are poor will now have to struggle with the small amount of food being served in some schools, and then with their parents thinking that government is providing everything for free. But as I'm saying, that does not take away the responsibility of the parent to feed their child.
Right.
The free senior high school, the F is a small f. Everything is free. Right. So regardless, the parents still has an obligation to take care of their ward. When your ward is going to school, give them enough food so that should the dining system fail because of the liquidity issues that continue to bedevil the distribution of schools, then your child will have a buffer to rely on. Right. Let me indicate that there are two other challenges that were raised by CHASS and Jacob.
Quickly, Mr. Asari, you have to do that quickly.
Yeah. The two other challenges that were raised by CHASS and Jacob are they are all symptoms. If a supplier is supplying 60 instead of 100, or a supplier is supplying 100 bags, but then each bag, instead of being 100 kg, is 80 kg, they are all symptoms of the supplier being owed. The supplier is broke. He has locked his cash in the system, and you are owing them 6 months, 8 months, some 2 million, 3 million. So in that case, they don't have money to supply the right amount. So all we are discussing, I'm saying, are symptoms. The main cause of the problem. let's disburse money from the finance ministry. So go and talk to the finance minister and find out from him what is happening with disbursing funds under the Free Senior School program.
Thanks for your contribution to the discussion. Kofi Asare is Executive Director of Africa Education Watch. We're wrapping up this conversation shortly, but let's go back to the central region. Richard Kojo-Nyarko was giving us some information on what's happening in some schools there. Richard, quickly, in a minute or two, wrap up on what you were telling us earlier.
Well, so what I've found from the schools, I have visited about 5 schools so far, and then we are told that the supplies, when they supply you 15 bags of, let's say, rice, then you only get 10 of them, and then you state on the sheet that you have received 15, and so it's making them underfeed the students. And the authorities have also been telling me that is increasing in the dormitories because the students are very hungry. They are not being fed like they used to. So in some occasions, some parents have had to order food to be given to their wards in some of these senior high schools. If you go to some of them, the parent association have agreed to pay some amount to cushion the school authorities in order to feed their children and feed them very well. So we have spoken to some parents whose wards are at Wesley Girls, and they are paying like 500 Ghana cedis to augment the feeding grants of the school. As in Fantipin, it's around 250, and they are using that to support the system in order for the children to be fed well. But even though the strike is still on, all the schools that I've visited, they've had to make some arrangement, special arrangement for the students to be fed. And so it is not the case that the students in the senior high schools here are not being fed. There is a special arrangement that is being done. And the authorities are telling me that the situation is dire because it is really making academic activities very, very difficult, because if students are being underfed, then the implications are very, very well known.
Right, Richard, we'll leave it here. Richard Kojo-Nyarko joined us from the central region. And in wrapping up this conversation, I'm going back to Mr. Nyaba, who is with NAGRAT, and he will be telling us, Jacob Anaba, I beg your pardon, who is with NAGRAT. He will be telling us their response to the president's appeal for them to return to the classroom. And that will lead us to our next conversation on the cost of living allowance, because not only teachers are asking for, TUC is also demanding that. Ms. Anaba?
Yes.
The president says, please go back to the classrooms.
Thank you. In one of his State of Nation address, our president indicated that education was going to be his priority, and then the teacher was going to be the center. Now, the question I ask is, we were giving 4% base pay increase in 2021 and 7% in 2022. The living standard of the teacher, and for that matter, the Ghanaian worker, is deteriorating, and government is aware. We shouldn't have asked for an increment or cost of living allowance, but we did. And as a father, we made this passionate appeal to him on May the 1st May, that he should use his executive power to grant us COLA of 20%, the least that we could ask, looking at the inflationary rates of our country at the time, which was above 26%. So to we, what we want is to hear good news from our father, the president, and not this appeal, because when we go back to the classroom, we will not have that peace of mind to continue with the work that God has given us to do and for our nation to move forward. So we will rather appeal to him once more again that he should grant us this small concession we have asked, that he should use his executive power in giving us just 20% COLA.
Interesting. Responding to the president's appeal with an appeal. That's Jacob Anaba, Vice President of NAGRAT, ending this particular conversation. But coming up shortly, Benjamin will be having the conversation on the cost of living allowance. But this time around, not only focused on teachers, but other workers who belong to TUC do stay for that.